Hey everyone, welcome to a dreadful Thursday. I hope you guys are having a great day because the markets sure didn't have one. So the markets were down today. NASDAQ, Dow Jones, S&P, Bitcoin was way down today. It's just bad news on top of bad news that kept coming. Ethereum is way down. We got a lot to cover today, so there's going to be the chapters on down on the bottom. You guys can follow those for the topics you want to listen to or watch. We got Argo provides February production update. Mawson, same thing. Hut8 provided their fiscal year 2022 numbers, financials. We'll go over that along with their Q4 numbers for that. Then we got to talk about KuCoin, Silvergate, and Bitcoin filling the gap. It happened today. I was talking about this for a while in the past where I think Bitcoin was going too fast, too high, and that we probably would need to come back down and fill the CME futures Bitcoin gap. And we did that today. Now, where does that going to take us? We'll take a look at it, see what it means for us going forward. So this is going to be a pretty long video. Like I said, chapters in the bottom, you guys can follow that. But as always, non-financial advice for entertainment only. Do your own research. Don't fall for scams. I'm investing in fine coins and companies for full disclosure. And I did buy today some more. I did dollar cost averaging, and we'll talk about that as well. So let's take a look at the markets here really quick, see what's going on there. Here's what we got. S&P was down 1.85% to 3918. Dow Jones was down 1.66 to 32,254. NASDAQ was down 1.8% to 11,995. Bitcoin was down at one point, I believe, almost like 10% on the day, or not 10%. It was down quite a bit, but it was not down that much. Let me see here. Yep, looking at the right one. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right one. So it was down 6.14% on the day today, and it closed at 20,367. We were at a high today of 21,825. That's roughly a $1,500 change in price swing today. That happened. The news that came out yesterday with Silvergate and then the news story with KuCoin today, that all contributed to Bitcoin having a pretty bad day. It's now down a little bit more. Again, it's at down 1.112%. It's right now at 20,146 roughly trading. This is where we had our the CME futures on Bitcoin, and we had this gap that developed over the weekend. One of these days, this was back on Friday the 13th in January, so that was the weekend that this happened in. We had this gap right between 19,955 and 20,000 or 20,520. That was the gap that we created over that weekend. We just now filled that today, and you can see here on the CME futures, Bitcoin was down 9.27%. So it was down more on the CME futures than it was down on actual Bitcoin on the Coinbase exchange. So now that we filled that gap, what's going to happen? It's really anybody's guess. Right now, we are really getting into the oversold territory on the RSI. It leads me to think we may possibly trade sideways a little bit before we maybe go down a little bit more and test our support here at 18,370, because if we look far enough out, there really isn't anything here except for, well, right here, right where we're at. So there might be some support over here. We'll see if we can bounce off of that. If that doesn't hold, then the real support that we do have is back here, which goes quite a ways back. You can follow it all the way back to here as well, where we've had support. So we'll see how this is going to play out going forward, but right now it's not looking good. Hopefully it will keep support right around here that we do have from back here. A little bit, it's not that great of a support, but we do have it. So we'll see how that goes. On the 1 hour chart, we were way oversold here on the 1 hour chart. If we look at the RSI here, let me see if we can pull this up a little bit, make this a little bit bigger, squeeze it in together. RSI fell to a 9.13. That is way, way, way oversold. We bounced a little bit off of that, but we are still down a little bit more, and prices are about the same spot, a little bit higher, but RSI is higher again, so it leads me to believe that we might be falling down even more as well. If we look at the 4 hour chart here, we can see that the RSI is also way down in the oversold territory, 11.9. Last time we were back here was way back when we had this crash back here. This was back in November, early November of last year, and at that point price was significantly lower, so that's a good sign there that this might be our new kind of bottom here that we reach on Bitcoin, and then continue possibly going back up higher once all this FUD kind of clears out. Okay, so that's what we got going on here with Bitcoin right now. Ethereum was down today as well. If we look at the daily chart, zoom in over here, we can see that Ethereum was down 6.18% as well. It is now it's getting close to being oversold territory on the daily chart. On the 4 hour chart, we can see that it's way oversold here as well, down to 15.71, and on the 1 hour chart, it bottomed out at a low of, if we can get there, about 11 or so. So way oversold right now on both of these guys. Okay, now the miners didn't do so well either today. Let's take a look at the miners here as well. The miners, any was down, actually up today, 0.55%, just barely up. I think they were the only ones that were actually up today. Everybody else was down on the day. So if we zoom in a little bit on the chart here, we can see that we've had nothing but red days for the most part on all these miners here, with the exception of a couple of days here and there. Argo was down 11.18% to $1.35. Bit Digital was down 9.32% to $1.07. Bitfarms was down 13.04% to 71 cents. I did buy more of Bitfarms today. For full disclosure, dollar cost average in, they're below my average price, so I wanted to get into them. Cypher was down 5.33% to $1.42. CleanSpark was down 10.29% to $2.13. I also bought into them as well today. Core Scientific was down 14.74% to 26 cents. DigiHost was down 10.32% to $1.13. DMG was down 5.85% to 19 cents. Greenidge was down 7.53% to 40 cents. Hive was down 10.53% to $2.38. Hut8 was down 14.19% to $1.27. Iris Energy was down 5.91% to $2.39. Marathon was down 10.84% to $5.51. Mawson was down Mawson was actually up today, 2.09% to $2.44. Riot was down 12.22% to $5.53. Soluna was down 5.5% to 33 cents. And TerraWolf was down 7.94% to 62 cents. And you can see here that for the most part, it looks like Cores and Hut8 got beat up the most here in the trading day today. Okay, now with that being said, it's obviously a painful experience to be down so much, but if you're a long-term investor and you're looking to dollar cost average in, these are the days that are really, they're on sale, so it's a great time to do it. So as an investor, I was able to do that, and I will probably continue to do that as the market goes down, if it goes down. If it doesn't go down, as long as I'm below my dollar cost average for the shares, I'll continue to buy in. Now, that's not telling that you guys have to do that as well, but I think that's kind of the prudent way of going about it right now. We just don't know where the bottom's going to be really at. Are we going to continue going up? I sure hope so. But it's going to be, I think, a turbulent next couple of months before hopefully the Fed stops raising rates. Once that happens, I think that's when we'll start going back up. So that's just my 2 cents there. Let's take a look at the network hash rate, see what's going on there as well. And if we reload the page really quick, see what's going on here. So on the 7-day average, it looks like we got a new all-time high of 332 million terahash per second. And on the 1-day average, we have come back down a little bit here to 284 million right now. But the average is still going up, and that's kind of what we expect to happen. Okay, so there's all that. Let's talk about what's going on in the news here that has triggered all this. So the first thing that happened was yesterday, I believe, Silvergate provided some news. So Bitcoin dips below 21,000 to reach lowest level in 7 weeks. The Silvergate bank shut down, shakes investors. And here's what we got going on. On Wednesday, so this was yesterday, Silvergate Capital, the parent company of the lending-focused bank, said that Silvergate Bank would voluntarily liquidate its assets and shutter operations. This was not something that the investors were looking forward to, but we did talk about this last week, where I said it might take a couple weeks before something like this happens, where possibly somebody else buys them out, but it looks like they're going to be liquidating now. So this remains a tough environment for crypto given the fallout from Silvergate Capital. So Bitcoin could see further selling pressure test the 20,000 levels. Well, it did that now. This was Edward Moya, senior market analyst at foreign exchange market maker Oanda, wrote on Thursday note. Well, that definitely happened. In the past 24 hours, Bitcoin posted more than 98 million liquidations, with over 94% of them being long positions. CoinList data shows, so that's not good, obviously. And then investors became concerned, and Bitcoin's price started dropping when last week, when Silvergate said that it had delayed filing its annual report and warned of its potential inability to continue as a going concern. We talked about it back then, and it's finally done and over with. It's liquidating. It's going out of business, which isn't a good sign for, well, I wouldn't say it's a great sign. It's definitely bad for the overall crypto market because a lot of players were using them, but I think somebody else will come in and fill those shoes, potentially operate maybe a little bit better, where they don't go under. So there's always a cleansing process with Bitcoin bear markets. This is just part of it, and something to be expected. Next, today came out also a story from New York Attorney General that KuCoin and Ether is a security. So here's what we got going on this one. This came out about 2 o'clock this afternoon, I believe. This story broke, and I didn't actually highlight it here, or at least I did, but it went away. Not sure why. So here's what's going on. New York State Attorney General Letitia James filed suit against KuCoin on Thursday, alleging I can't even pronounce that, base cryptocurrency exchange is violating securities laws by offering tokens, including Ether, that met the definition of a security without registering with the Attorney General's office. The suit is the first time a regulator has claimed in court that Ether is a security, right? So that's not good there. But we talked about this before also, where a lot of people, even Gensler, is saying that Ether and all the other tokens, coins, and everything else, except for Bitcoin, are securities. So now we're kind of seeing this come to fruition. Through the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC Chairman Gary Gensler has hinted that his agency might consider Ether to be a security. The SEC's sister regulatory agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, has long maintained that both Bitcoin and Ether are commodity assets. I think that's going to change. I think based on what we know, where the SEC is going, some of these other players, it looks like they're going to be trying to regulate Ether as a security. But we'll see. Okay, let's see here. So James' suit argues that Ether is considered a security under the Martin Act, a 102-year-old New York anti-fraud law that gives the Attorney General powers to investigate securities fraud and bring both civil and criminal actions against violators, because the value of Ether is dependent on the efforts of others, including co-founder Vitalik Buterin. So we know that is the case as well. They do have a foundation for that, and they are controlling it. So the good thing with Bitcoin was basically released to the public. There was no pre-mine, nothing of that sort. It was just, here's the code, you can mine it yourself. Nobody got any upfront coins from Bitcoin, basically what I'm trying to say. And it was just open to the public. So there's a difference there, I think. Okay, so all of that contributed to a pretty big loss in the Bitcoin value, Ethereum value as well today. A lot of long positions got liquidated. Unfortunately, this had to happen. So as long as the bad news, the FUD, doesn't continue on, we may bottom out here for this period. We'll see if we can hold right around the 20,000 mark. If we can, that's great. If not, we'll possibly go down to like 18,300, which is kind of our next support line. But we'll see. Right now, it looks like it has kind of bottomed out. So, but only time will tell. Okay. Next, let's get into some of the minor news here that we do have. The first one's going to be on Argo. Argo provided their operation update for February. So during the month of February, Argo mined 162 Bitcoin or Bitcoin equivalents, together BTC, or 5.17 BTC per day. This is an increase of 7% over 5.4 Bitcoins per day produced in January 2023. The company was able to achieve this increase in daily BTC production despite a 10% increase in average network difficulty in February compared to the prior month. They were able to achieve this, but the reason for that is they curtailed less. So they curtailed quite a lot in January. They curtailed less in February, which helped offset that number there. They should have been, if they mined for the full month, they would have been even better off. As of the 20th of February 2023, the company held 101 Bitcoin or Bitcoin equivalents. The company's total hash rate capacity continues to be 2.5 exahash. They're pretty much capped out right now at that spot right there. So let's take a look at the numbers I do have for them. Then we'll get into Mawson and Hut8's financial numbers as well. So Argo right now has 64.2 million shares outstanding. Stock price is $1.35. Market cap is 86 million. Their current hash rate is 2.5 exahash. Future hash rate 2.5 exahash. They are fully installed right now. No future growth right now. BTC HODL is 101 Bitcoins right now. That's valued at about 2.2 million. Probably less than that because Bitcoin has come down. And I'm using the average Bitcoin price for the month of February, or for the month of March. So that's definitely going to come down here in value. BTC production here. They peaked at around August with 235 Bitcoins being produced. Then they continued to slide down here through the following months. December was their worst month, above 147 Bitcoin. Then January improved to 168, and now February is up a little bit, 162. Had it been, we know February is a shorter month, less than 2 or 3 days, depending which ones you're counting. So they would have possibly mined a little bit more than in January. Their BTC per exahash efficiency has also been coming down here. You can see here that their best month, it looks like, was in April of last year. And ever since then, they've been, coming down in efficiency as well. They did spike up a little bit here in January at 67.19. February came back down to 64.79. And then for the month of February, they generated about 3.77 million in revenue based on 162 Bitcoins being mined. They sold, it looks like, 176 Bitcoin during the month as well. They had 115 at the end of January last time. Now they're at 101 right now. So they sold about 4 million worth of Bitcoin potentially. For the month of February, they were operating for about 20.48 days on average. Here to get to the 3.775 million. That is an increase over January, which was 19.7 days only operational. And in December, they were even worse at 16.1. So their improvements are based on the amount of days that they're actually mining, not curtailing. That's the improvements that we're seeing here on them. And based on where they have been in the past, I'm guessing maybe they might be at 21 days in March. We'll see if they can actually mine for the full month or not. Okay, so that's what we got there. Institution-wise, institutions did decrease a little bit to 27 from 32. Shares decreased also to 48 million from 51. Percentage owned decreased just slightly here from 10.06 or from 10.7 to 10.06. We still have the same analyst ratings as far as buy, hold, sell, and all that. So we got one hold, one underperform. Price target stayed the same at high 660 for the high average 580, and the low was $5 for that one. And based on all that information that we do have, we're using the current quarter potentially where they might be about 10.8 million. Last 3 quarters has only one actual number provided by them. The other 2 numbers are my estimates, and we'll see how close we get to those. But we're looking at about 48.7 million potentially for them to have in revenue in the last 4 quarters, including this quarter. If we use 50% net income from gross revenue, we're looking at $3.79 for the stock with a PE of 10. They're not growing that much. They're pretty much fully installed right now. That's why I'm using PE 10. And then if we use 75% net income from gross revenue, looking at $5.69 with a PE of 10 as well. Based on that, they're $1.35 right now. I do think that they are way undervalued, as most companies are right now. So there is upside potential for them if Bitcoin starts going back up. With all that being said and done, the only thing that they can do now is grow. They are in a hard spot right now with not having too much capital left to them to grow. They did sell a facility in Texas to Galaxy Digital, I believe. So that kind of helped them out a little bit, get them out of a bad spot financially. But once they get through that, they definitely need to grow. We'll see how they do end up growing here, and we'll just keep an eye on it. Right now, I think all of their miners are being basically hosted by Galaxy Digital right now. Okay, so we'll see. So that's it for Argo. Let's take a look at the next one, which is going to be on Mawson here. Mawson is pretty quick as well. So Mawson Infrastructure Group Inc. announces February 2023 operational update. And here is the main details of it. So February Bitcoin self-mining energy market program and hosting co-location results. Total self-mining Bitcoin produced 43.3 Bitcoin. Self-mining miners installed was 5,880. Energy market program revenue approximately 18,000. So not a lot of revenue from that. And then key achievements in February. They commenced construction on Sharon 120 megawatts facility. They signed Midland 20 megawatt expansion agreement, so that's good there. They're also transferring all their Australian MDCs and ASIC units to Midland, Pennsylvania for deployment in Q2 of 2023, and then deployed an additional 10,000 ASIC units at Midland, Pennsylvania for hosting and preparation for energization in Q2 of 2023. I think you guys know by now my feelings on hosting. I don't think it's as profitable. I mean, it's a good business, but nowhere near as profitable as self-mining. I wish they would concentrate more on their self-mining business than they are right now on hosting. Okay, so that's all the information we have here. We've covered their 2023 operational focus, what they're focusing on. So let's take a look at the numbers I do have on them, and we'll get into Hut8. So Mawson, let's see here, where's Mawson? Mawson is going to be right there. Okay, Mawson currently has about 13.6 million shares outstanding. Stock price is at $2.44. Market cap is at 33 million right now. Current hash rate is like 533 petahash. Future hash rate, they're supposed to get up to about 1.7 exahash. They are currently 31% operational, and future hash rate growth is 219%. So they still have pretty good growth left in them a little bit here. They don't hodl anything. They pretty much sell everything that they do. You can see here that their best month was back in May with 185 Bitcoins mined for that period. Ever since then, it's been coming down up a little bit here in September to 102. Then a big drop in October. This is where they sold a lot of their, well, they sold, I believe, their facility and miners to CleanSpark. Ever since then, that's dropped down to 53 in October, 34 November, 23 in December. Then they started picking up a little bit here in January and February. 34.93 in January and 43.3 Bitcoins mined in February. So that's good there. Their efficiency also has been kind of picking up here in the last couple months. They're now up to 81.2 Bitcoins per exahash. So that's better than where it was back in December of 23. Only 23 Bitcoins. Based on what they mined, it looks like they mined 81.28 Bitcoin, or 43.3 Bitcoin, sorry. They generated approximately $1 million in revenue from that. And if we look at their February numbers here, we can see that they were mining for about 25.7 days to get to that number as well. So it's better than it was in January of 19.23 days. And so that helped them out tremendously. We'll see where they can, where they are in February. Okay, let's take a look at the institutions part of it now. So institutions stayed the same. There wasn't any change here from it, at least from, the only change that was in here was on the analyst targets. So we have now a high of $12, an average of $7.50, and a low of $3 currently. So that is a decrease from where it was just a month prior. Everything else stayed the same. We still have 1 buy rating on them as it is. So based on all that information that we do have, we're using the current quarter of approximately 2.8 million, but that all depends on where February comes in at. All right, January, February, no, March. We're in March. I keep forgetting we're in March. Where March comes in at, and that will get us either close to 2.8 or maybe a little bit less than that, around 2.7, 2.6, something like that. And we're using the last 3 quarters for them. 2 of the quarters are actual numbers provided by them. The last quarter here in ending December is my estimate for them. We'll see how close we get to it. And if we're using the 50% net income from gross revenue, we're looking at the stock price should be like $19.83, mainly because they don't have a lot of shares out. With a P of 20, even with that, I think we could probably reduce that probably to 15 because their growth is pretty good, but the hash rate's not going to be that big. It's only going to be 1.7 exahash. So if we use 15, that should be around $14.87. 75% net income from gross revenue, we're looking at $22.31. The only thing that I would recommend with them, it's good that they're actually able to mine a little bit more days during the month, which is good. They're not curtailing as much. And since curtailing doesn't really give them that much revenue, I don't know if it's worth it. Right now with Bitcoin being down, I think they're going to probably even curtail more. Me personally, I would recommend for them to really concentrate on their self-mining more so than they are on the hosting. Not sure what kind of deals they have with the hosting. Even if they're making 15, 20% on that, it still would be better if they were self-mining. But there is some security, at least with hosting, where you don't really have it with as much with self-mining. Right? If Bitcoin goes below a price where you're paying for electricity, well, you're not generating anything with, well, I guess it goes either way. I'm kind of thinking out loud here, so I don't think there's any benefit to hosting actually, because if Bitcoin goes down in price, well, the miners are going to shut down anyways, or are going to tell you to shut down because they're not profitable with the electrical costs and everything else overhead, so they're going to tell you to shut down, so you're not making anything on that anyways. So yeah, never mind. It's not a good idea to be hosting. Okay, so that's it for Mawson. They do have to grow like everybody else. We'll see how they end up going through this year. Obviously, this year is still going to be a little bit tough. I think the next couple of months are going to be tough. Once, like I said, the Fed stops dropping or increasing interest rates, that's when I think Bitcoin will start going back up. But we'll see, and then we'll see everything goes. Lastly, but not last, least but not last, Hut8 reports operating and financial results for 2022. Here are some of the information that we do get from them. And this is a quote from the CEO, Jamie Leverton. So while 22 was a challenging time for the entire industry, yes, it was, we fared well thanks to our team's commitment to operational excellence, our diversified lines of business, and our strong growth profile. So Jamie Leverton, CEO, as we look ahead, we will continue to uphold these operating principles as we work to close our business combination with USBTC and begin operating as a U.S. domiciled digital asset mining, hosting, managed infrastructure operations, and high-performance computing organization, which is true. And we'll see if this gets through, if it gets voted through by the shareholders. There's still a lot of unknowns, like I keep saying. We don't know all the USBTC financial numbers. It's kind of all in the dark there. Would be nice to see that. But the good thing is that they are going to be diversifying their operations, growing a little bit. So that's a big plus there, I think. Okay? But just the not knowing USBTC numbers right now, that's making people a little bit hesitant, I think. So they got to really provide that information for investors if they want to sell them on this. Okay, so 2022 highlights. Revenue decreased by 23.1 million to 150.7 million during the year ended December 31st, 2022, compared to 173.8 million during the year ended December 31st, 2021. Obviously, we had a really great year in 2021 because Bitcoin was going up like crazy. And then after that, it pretty much topped out in December or right around November. And ever since then, has been coming down. So we went from 69,000 all the way down to a low of 15,000 something in 2022. So it wasn't a great year. The company mined 3,568 Bitcoin in 2022, a 28.1 increase compared to 2021, due to an increase in hash rate from the expansion of the company's fleet of miners and mining activities, which was true. They did grow, but they didn't grow fast enough, I think. And then Hut8's high-performance computing operations generated 16.9 million of revenue in 2022, the majority of which is monthly recurring revenue. So I think that's a good part of their business there, but it's definitely, the percentage has been growing lately. We'll take a look at the numbers that we do have for them, but it has been growing lately, but it's still not as good as Bitcoin goes back into a bull run, I think. It's a lot there. Let's get into the numbers here. So I'm using all the numbers that they provided here in my spreadsheets. Let's take a look at my spreadsheets. Those have the prior quarter numbers as well. So it gives us a good guide as far as where things are heading in. So if we look at Hut8 here is Hut8's numbers. So I have fiscal year 2022, which is what they provided. And then based on that, we're using the last 3 quarters, Q1, Q2, and Q3, to come up with the numbers for Q4, right? Subtracting it from the total, that's how we're able to get Q4 numbers for them. So let's get into the assets here. Assets did decrease here a little bit to 30.5 million from 33 million. Not too bad. Cash and cash equivalents was down, so that was down a little bit. What are we looking at here? Accounts receivable, sorry, I got mixed up here. Accounts receivable was down a little bit here to 1.5 from 1.8. Digital assets was down about 20 million, which is a pretty big decrease here, but that's based on possibly the value of Bitcoin coming down. So that's down a little bit here. Prepaid deposits, prepaid expenses was up to 9.8 from 7.6. So that's good there. Total current assets was down about 20 million, and that's based on the Bitcoin price coming down, the digital assets value coming down as well. So that's down from 265 million to 245 million. Property and plant was way down, 224 million from 207 million. Deposits and prepaid expenses was down also 27 million from 75. And then intangible assets and goodwill was up a little bit to 15 million from 13 million. So total assets is now at 412 million from 561 million. That is a big decrease there, and it has been coming down here ever since the beginning of the year. Liabilities. So accounts payable is up to 13.9 million from 12.3. Lease liabilities is up also 4.3 from 3.9. Loans payable is up a little bit here to 11.8 from 11.5, so that's not too bad. Total current liabilities did increase by about roughly 2.4 million to 30 million from 27 million. And then non-current lease liabilities was down a little bit, 16.9 from 17.2. Non-current loans payable was down to 14.2 from 17.5, so that's good there. Non-current warrant liabilities was way down to 212,000 from 4.5 million, and total liabilities did decrease here to 61,547,000 from 67,141,000, and these are all numbers in Canadians. Sorry, I forgot to mention that in the beginning. Now, shareholder equity, share capital is 767 million, so that's up actually from 725 million. Warrants is the same, so that's no change there. Contributed surplus 12.7, so that's up a little bit from 11.4. Accumulated deficit 431 million negative from 244 million negative, so that's not good there. And total stockholder equity was down to 351 million from 494 million, so that's what, roughly 140 million dollars down. And then total liabilities to stockholder equity was also down to 412 from 561, so that's almost 150 million in decrease right there. So that's not good. Revenues also were down a little bit here. Total revenues was 21.8 million for the quarter compared to 31.6 million. And you can see here that, well, Bitcoin price was up higher during the beginning of the year of 2022. It has been falling down throughout 2022. So that's kind of be to expected. We see this through pretty much all the miners here. And their total revenue for the year was 150 million. Their self-mining was 17.3 million for the quarter. That's way down from Q3 here at 27.2 million. Their high-performance computing was up a little bit here to 4.487 million compared to 4.4. And then I did a little calculation here to see what percentage of the revenue is actually from high-performance computing. And you can see here that in the beginning of Q1, it was only 6.2%, and Q2 was 10.7%. Q3 was 13.9%, and then Q4 was 20.6%. Overall, for the year, it averaged out to be about 11.2% of their revenue. And then also another calculation that I did here was to figure out, since they don't actually provide the information for the site operation costs based on self-mining or hosting, it's all combined. I'm using basically these numbers here, the percentages, to come up with what they possibly could be paying for site operation costs for self-mining. So these are just estimates. These aren't anything accurate, but we're taking the site operation costs of 16.2 million reported in Q4, multiplying it times the 79.4% of that, and we're getting the 12.8 here. And then I'm using that in my analysis up top as well. Okay, so I wanted you guys to be clear on that. So site operation costs were down a little bit here to 16.2 from 20 million in Q3, so that's good there. Depreciation was up 29 million from 25. Cost of revenue was, let's see here, 45 million, so about the same as it was before, not a big change there. Okay, so then when we look at gross profit minus depreciation, we're looking at about 5.6 million, and gross profit minus depreciation percentage was about 25%. So that has been coming down as well here each quarter, you can see. Overall, for the year, it's about 45.73% right now. Okay, Operating expenses, selling and general administrative, has come up here quite a bit here, about, what is that, 3.5 million in just 1 month. So that's a big increase there. Not sure why that happened. It was 11.2 million in Q3. And then they had a huge impairment here for some reason, 113 million. Impairment of mining infrastructure and servers. I'm not sure where that came from. I'll have to look into it a little bit more. And then total operating expenses was 165 million for Q4, it looks like. Their total for the year was 261 million. So that was a big increase there. Not sure why. Okay, then we got foreign exchange losses, all that. Net income before taxes was negative 162 million for Q4. Big increase, obviously, from Q3. And then for the year, it was 171 million. Net loss income was negative 200 million for the quarter, and for the year was negative 315 million. So they must have, I wonder if that's on the servers. I wonder if that's just the, well, I'll have to look into it. I'm not sure. If you guys know what this is, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. So net income per share, they lost $1.29 overall for the year. For the quarter, Q4 looks like $1.01, and diluted was 99 cents loss. And this is what they reported. Weighted average number of shares outstanding was 187 million. And that's also kind of funky that in Q3 it was 194. Not sure how they're calculating that. I think it's just the weighted averages. So that's it there. Overall, not a good year for a lot of the miners, Hut8 included as well. But if we look at their numbers up here, BTC mined for the quarter was 698. Starting hash rate was about 3 exahash. They came down to 2.5 roughly, and that's mainly because of, well, no longer Ethereum mining in there. You also had the site North Bay? I think it's North Bay, where they're having a dispute with the electricity provider. That caused them to have the site be inoperable basically for quite a few months. It still is. They're moving servers and equipment out of that facility. So their average hash rate was 2.7 exahash. There was a decrease of 566 petahash during that time frame. They mined on average per exahash about 250 bitcoins for that period. And cost to mine 1 bitcoin was about $18.4 thousand on that one. That's minus depreciation. And then if we use all the cost in, it was about 65,000 all in. Now, debt to equity ratio, that came in at 0.1752. So that is a little bit of an increase here, which is still a really good number there. Current ratio is also really good at 8.15. It was 9.56. So it has been coming down here each quarter. We start getting nervous when it starts getting below 1. So I'm still nowhere near being nervous on this one. Book value of equity, then you got assets minus liabilities, BVE, has been coming down as well to 351,390,000 from 494 million. And price to book ratio, market cap versus BD is 0.923. So I believe that one's still good. Revenue, we know what that revenue has been. General administrative compensation was way up here, 14.7 compared to the revenue. So that's 67% of their costs was their revenue. So a lot of miners are having huge compensation and administrative costs. They got to get that doggone thing under control. It's just ridiculous, I think, in some spots. So I'll be harping on that on everybody that gets a high percentage here. It was pretty good here in the beginning of the year, 21% in Q1, 28% in Q2. And it's been going up here in Q3, 35, and now 67. Overall, for the year, it's at 33%. I think that's still pretty high. Okay, so that is it. Also, my numbers here as far as my estimates, I was a little high. I was high by 1.72% based on what I had them possibly generating for the Q4. They came in a little bit lower, so it's still not bad. I want to be within 2.5%. I was within that, so I'm happy with that. Love getting that even lower, but I'll take what we got. Okay, so that is it. Big things from Hut8. Got to control spending, just like everybody else. This is not a free ride on the backs of shareholders. Yes, shareholders will invest in your company, but I think sometimes the owners or the CEOs, the management boards, everything else, take advantage of the shareholders by diluting shares, giving themselves high compensation, even though there might be growth, but there is no real profits. So that just kind of gets me upset sometimes, and I'm going to be harping on that every time I can. They got to get costs under control. They got to continue to grow. They got to figure out what they're going to do with USBTC if that passes through with shareholder approval, and see how they're going to grow going forward. So they got a lot going for them, but they also have to do a lot of fixing as well, I think, especially in the financial part of it with getting expenses under control. Okay, so that's just my 2 cents. Let me know what you guys think of all this, and this will be it. We'll see how Bitcoin does tomorrow. It's going to be definitely a bad week for Bitcoin. Nonetheless, Bitcoin and the miners, it's going to be a huge red week for both. So we'll see how things play out. Other than that, we'll see what happens tomorrow, and that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe. It helps me out tremendously. Thank you for all the Patreon members for their continued support. The spreadsheet is going to be available to them tonight, and we'll call it a day. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then,